Good evening, teachers, and a very warm welcome to each one of you. Today's webinar is the fifth in the series of webinars that is leading to Teachathon 2021. This year's Teachathon is scheduled on September 17th, 18th, and 19th, and the focus is National Education Policy 2020. As you all are aware, NEP came about to ensure that what students learn in school today is tomorrow. And today's webinar, Future Ready Skills, focuses on how schools can prepare their students to be productive and participative global citizens of the future with all the relevant skills. Everyone who remembers his or her own education remembers teachers, not methods or techniques. The teacher is the heart of the education system. Our speaker for today's webinar, Ms. Preeti Sutta, believes in this quote by Sidney Hook, who's an American philosopher. She has dedicated a quarter of a century of her life in educating children and guiding them to become good human beings. Her passion for shaping lives leads her to go beyond the defined duties of a teacher and encourage the values of compassion, sharing, being humane, respecting diversity, caring for the environment, and fellow human beings. Her goal is to instill a love for learning. A self-professed lifelong learner who thrives on new knowledge and values unique experiences, she believes that staying a learner throughout life helps one to remain youthful, agile, and childlike. Very compassionate, encouraging, non-judgmental, and flexible in her approach to her students, she believes it's an honor and a blessing to be an educator. There is a famous saying, if you love what you do, you would never have to do a day's work in your life. Dear educators, let's put our hands together to welcome our speaker, Ms. Preeti Sutta, whose passion and profession is teaching. We look forward to an interesting discussion today, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lata ma'am, for that introduction. Thank you, Sumati ma'am, and I'm really honored to be here. And as you mentioned, what I believe that I'm a lifelong learner. So this also is a learning in that direction for me, sharing my thoughts, sharing what I resonated with as I was looking up for this topic. And thank you for giving that to me because it has been very, very interesting. I will just share my presentation. So we're going to talk today about future ready skills. So very, very good evening to all the lovely educators who have joined us today. And I don't know from which segment you are. You may be teaching the kindergartners to the grade 12. Well, whoever we are, each one of us, I think, needs a pat on the back right at the beginning because we have been doing a wonderful job throughout this lockdown that has been thrown at us. So we were not ready for all of this, but let's see today what are these future ready skills as well as students as we move along. So I begin with a quote by Sudha Murthy, someone I really follow. She says, life is an exam where the syllabus is unknown. The question papers are not set, nor are there any model answer papers. So we as adults have faced that time and again that in our adult life, we are faced with many, many challenges, but we tend to manage in spite of those challenges. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we falter, sometimes we duck, we avoid things, right? But we tend to try and take on those challenges and we really don't know what the answers are. Every single day, there's something new happening, especially we as educators. If we go back to 2020, just before the lockdown, we were all every single day, the moment we walked into school, we would be faced with some or the other situation every single day. We are dealing with, as a class teacher, 40 little kids there, right? They may have their own challenges. So every single day we come across something different to deal with. And our mind is constantly at work, how to cope with that. But we do cope, whether we take help or whatever is it we do, but we try and make the best of it and try and find a solution. With this, I come to, I'm sure in most presentations, we do have one slide of the coronavirus. So I thought I must add one too. Yes. So here, everybody has been focusing on the negative aspects of corona. Definitely for, very, very understandable reasons that we are focusing on the negative aspects. We have gone through sometimes, very closely a family member falling sick or somebody we know, and across the country, we've lost people we know. And it's been very, very sometimes, taking us all into a dip, but we need to stand back again. So I want all of us to shift the focus and use the chat box and tell me what is it that they feel is something positive that may have come out of this pandemic that has put this new way of life that we all are experiencing day in and day out. So is there something that you think that is positive that is coming out of this entire situation? Let me see. I have responses in the chat box. Family bonding, very good. And living with minimum resources, grateful to be safe. Being with family, absolutely. Yes. Anything else that you felt that digital and online skill development? Absolutely, yes. Kalai Vani says technology development. Absolutely, yes. Ambali says we have learned a lot. Yes, we are lifelong learners and we are educators, and it's an opportunity to learn. Meena says we've learned a lot. Thank you for your responses. Anybody else who wants to give it a different spin? Our new strengths. Yes, we discovered many new strengths, Ramita. Thank you for that, which we didn't know that we, even had those strengths within us. So it's really interesting to see what are the positive aspects. And some of them could also be, which I felt as a positive aspect, was that it gave us a pause in time. To some extent, it gave us a pause in time. Depends upon what we are doing, whether we are at home or we are a working person, but it gave us a pause in time to reflect. We went into reflection. We saw a lot of creativity happening, right? We saw a lot of students coming forward to write books. We saw a lot of changes. We saw people learning new skills and going digital. So those were also the things. Apart from that, I think as educators, yes, Meena says we teachers have turned the situation positive by making our kids learn through technology. Absolutely, yes. We did not say, we have a never say die attitude as teachers. We wanted to make sure we are able to reach out to our children. So we definitely went on to learning new skills, right? Apart from that, on 29th of July, we commemorated 1 year of the National Education Policy 2020 coming forth. And I think the one blessing that I found this time was it's a very, very progressive policy. And this time, so many stakeholders, because of the digital era that we are in, so many stakeholders, and this pause in the moment, it gave us an opportunity to share our thoughts, share our opinions, share our ideas, so that the national education policy can be brought up to what our expectations are. And definitely it is very, very progressive, and it has suggested many interesting things so that students can learn joyfully. So that is something that I'm really thankful for, that we got an opportunity. And then after that, we've been having, webinars after webinars discussing the policy, so that we all seem to understand what happens in a normal scenario. One of us may go for a workshop on a school day. Maybe 2 teachers are selected to go for a workshop. They go, they attend the workshop. That knowledge is something that they have with them. It's not always that knowledge sharing in our routine day-to-day work happens. So when we come back after that workshop, we may be motivated, but maybe we didn't share that knowledge with the rest of the team, right? But now what is happening? Day in, day out, I think technology has put each person on a single platform, whether it is the director of a school, the principal of a school, the vice principal, it's the teacher who's teaching, whether it's a teacher in the kindergarten or whether it's a teacher in grade 12. Technology has put all of us on a platform, and equally, I think equity as far as, everybody is getting information, everybody is getting knowledge. And I think that is something we really, really need to appreciate, that this pause has definitely helped us out with that. And with that, I move on to the next slide. So I want you to think for 10 seconds and think about the skills that you already possessed that helped you cope with these personal and workspace challenges that you may have faced. What were the skills that you thought that were inherent to you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you a link in the chat box. And with that link, I want you to go to Slido, and I want you to quickly try and answer this question for me. Just give me a moment. I posted this in Slido, and we have 3 polls coming up shortly. You will be using the same link for all 3 of them. So as we move on, I hope you're able to access the Slido window, and I'm waiting for your responses. That what are the skills that you already possessed? Okay, so please inherently delve within. What is it that you had that helped you cope with personal and workspace challenges? Suddenly we were in lockdown. Absolutely, we have the first answer there, and I think maybe many people wrote it. It says tech savviness. So some of us were digitally savvy, some of us had computer knowledge, some of us had a strength of facing challenges, computer knowledge, lovely. So those of us, who had the skill absolutely seem to be able to take off in this new world, digitally connected world of classrooms with our children. Yes, some person seems to have written that they had the peace of mind. So there's somebody who is, happy in their situation, and they feel peaceful at all times. And that helps them to cope with any kind of challenge that they face at the personal level or the workspace challenge. Multitasking, absolutely. Soft skills, lovely. Technology, yes. Excellent. Thank you so much for those answers, all of you. And with this, yes, some of you have written facing challenges. Some of you have written tolerance. I'm going to give it 10 more seconds. Some of you say patience. Yes, we needed a lot of patience. We were surrounded by family. We all move out into our workspaces, and we don't cross paths so often, and suddenly everybody was locked into a little space. Someone had a smaller space, someone had a bigger space. Connectivity was an issue. So we were tolerating each other also, and it led to a lot of introspection also, what was happening all around. Yes, resilience, facing challenges, patience. Lovely. Thank you so much for those responses. And with that, I move on. We will keep these things in mind as we move on. And the next question that I'm throwing at you for reflection first is, what year are you preparing your students for? I'm going to give you another, I'm going to shift the screen so that you're going to be able to go back to Slido again, and then you can type in, you can key in your choice over there. Are you training your children for 2030? Are you training your children for 2040, 2050, or is it for life? So looks like people are filling in the responses, and the response that I'm getting here that I can see is some of you say 2040, 9% are saying 2040, and 91% are saying that's quite interesting. Some of you are also saying 2030. Interesting. Bhuvneshwari thinks it's 2040 that she's training her children for. And most 78% are saying they are training them for life. That is something that we really need to delve on. What are we training our children for? Were we trained for this situation that we have faced in our life? Did any education as such train us? Yes, definitely knowledge about biology, knowledge about the spread of viruses, and those kind of things are needed. Knowledge is needed. IQ is important, but when are we training our students for? We are training our students for life. That is something that we should be, and step by step. Yes, I'm training my child to be, or my student to be ready for 2030, 2040, and even for life. So that is the way we should look at this. Moving forward, what, in your opinion, are the future ready skills for students? Again, you will get a Slido window, and I want all of you to use that and come up with your responses. I'll just shift the screen. What, in your opinion, are some of the future ready skills? Perfect. I've already got responses there. Thank you for taking onto the chat box. So you are saying you want children to be having creativity, collaboration, creative thinking. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Manila ma'am. Thank you, Namita. Decision making, self-independent, team spirit, emotional intelligence, courage, creative thinking. Amazing. So those are the skills that we are looking for to develop in our children as we move along. And those are some of the skills which are overlapping, which even we felt that we had, and they helped to help us cope in this unusual situation that Corona threw at us. So I'm going to share screen again, just so we are able to move on. Yeah. Is this visible to you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this visible?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So I will not take time with that Slido activity. We are now going to be talking about education then and education now. So let's see what education was in the earlier times. In the earlier times, education was all about the Industrial Revolution. We were training children and people to only function like machines. But what has happened now? Right now, we see that this is an age of information and innovation. And that is why there has been a huge shift. There's so much information at the click of a button that we have. There's so much innovation happening all around us. There's a total shift from the industrial age. And earlier, everything used to be local and linear. We used to never really travel so much, right? The world was not so connected, but the world is so connected now. At the click of a button, we are able to reach anybody across the globe with our thoughts, with our opinions. We post a video on YouTube, we get so many likes. So everything has become very global and very exponential. It's the digital age. And we used to survive earlier in silos. We used to be living in little pockets, I would say. We'd be happy with our little families, and rather families would be just enough. And now there are systems in place that tend to connect us. Things have really become broad. Even though they have moved digitally, they have connected each one of us. We are much more connected. If today we have a child who's studying abroad, we don't feel disconnected. Why? Because we can just pick up the phone, make one WhatsApp call, and even have a look at the way they're looking, whether they're looking fine, they're looking healthy, right? And we want to, so many, we've just experienced it. Right now, we are connected with so many of us, listening to each other, sharing our ideas, at the click of a button. This is new things that we have learned. So there are lots and lots of systems. We've got a lot of connectivity happening between people now. Ideas are being shared. Earlier, this is the way, a classroom would look in the industrial age, 1919. You can see the number of kids are so many. Of course, this is not an Indian setup, but definitely even in an Indian setup, our number of children would be really, really large. And it was the usual chalk and talk. And then in the digital age, in 2019, we saw that, there was a technology intervention, there were smart boards that came up, and definitely that really, really changed the way education functioned, though there is still a lot that we need to do as educators. But definitely there was a huge shift in the way we approached education. This was education 1.0, where the teacher was the sage on the stage. She was the one who was giving the information. The children were receiving the information. They were responding to it and simply regurgitating that information in an examination. Everything was examination based in education 1.0. But when we moved on to education 2.0, I personally feel we are at this level. We started collaborating, communicating, connecting. We started doing project work, together and things like that. And social media was a little on the, sidelines. It was not so much focused upon, but the teacher was still the orchestrator there, right? There was a lot of project-based learning happening. There was trials to collaborate, but there's still more that we wanted to do. And I feel that we were somewhere around here right now, but Corona came and literally propelled us to move forward, where now we are moving slowly and steadily. And that should be the aim, to move to being an educator on the side, as a guide on the side, and just be very resourceful to be able to guide your students, right? That's very, very important. So the learner here needs to be a co-creator. The learner needs to be good at producing content. The learner needs to be good at researching skills. Okay, the learner needs to also be a good collaborator. So there are so many things. And if you see this picture, it says it all. The web is the curriculum. At the click of the button, we have so much information that sometimes we don't know what information to use and what not to. We need to sieve out what is important. So those are also skills that we need to know. And moving on, we see in 2030, we see some haziness over there. What's that haziness? We're all in the cloud. So learning is taking place in the cloud. Learning is little more learner-centric. Here, the learner is at the center of the learning. The learner is learning what he or she desires to learn, as well as the same time collaborating with like-minded other teams. And if you can see, there's a teacher who's hovering around. So his task is only to monitor them, to guide them, but he is not the one who is actually giving them all the information, as we have been doing all along till now. So we need to realize now that this linear career path no longer seems to exist. Earlier on in our mindsets that we had, we always used to think, okay, we go to college, we take up a job, we get promoted, we work very hard, we are sincere workers, we get closer and closer to a dream job, the level we want to reach. And then ultimately we reach that level by the time we retire. And after that, simply we say, okay, once we've retired, we usually don't work. There are very few people who are very enthusiastic even after that to take on things voluntarily, which I personally feel is so, so important to keep you active, agile, and happy and feeling useful, right? Feeling connected. So what is happening nowadays? Nowadays, what is happening is that if once a child is finishing high school, they choose a post-secondary program. They could change programs. They could finish one particular program. They could take up a job, a part-time job, go back to finishing their graduation. And somehow in our system and in our mindsets, we don't tend to accept it very well. It's high time that we accept this, that these changes are happening, and we need to give our learners some breathing space to decide what is it that they want to do? What is it that they want to pursue? If we give them that breathing space, somehow we feel very, very insecure. We feel very uncomfortable with the way our mindset has been, that we don't want them to be sitting home. I knew of a young girl rather, who decided right after her schooling, then she didn't get into any medical college. She decided to take a year off. She decided to take a year off and study. And then she took the tests again and she did clear them. That was her passion, but she didn't achieve it. So it's so nice to see that, she persevered and her family supported her. So it's important that we support our children and make sure we are, allowing them to follow their dreams, to follow their passions. We are currently, this is the situation that we are preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't yet been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know. We don't even know we have, right? We are in an age where 2 plus 2 is not necessarily 4. It could be something different, right? There is a different path the children are taking and they need to take. 65% of the children entering school today will ultimately end up in completely new jobs that don't yet exist. And nearly 50% of the subject knowledge that's acquired during the first year of a 4-year technical degree will be outdated by the time the students graduate. That is the situation. And that is the reason why when children are moving out of engineering colleges or colleges, they're not exactly ready for work. They're not trained for work as yet. That is the sad reality that is there. So recently I was, we had a TEDx youth event at school today in the morning. Recently, we were scouting around for speakers and we very, very inspiring speaker. Uh, we came across a very, very inspiring speaker, a young boy who he dropped out of his engineering college. And the reason was that he thought he would go on to studying engineering and it's going to be full of, hands-on learning and innovation. But what happened ultimately after 3 years, he felt that he was simply rote learning. He was not applying anything and he could not connect it to his real life. He was feeling very, very restless. He gave up engineering. So I wouldn't advise children to do that, but he gave up engineering, decided to follow his passion. And he researched that there were so many amputees that were there every single year with so many accidents happening. He went on to making prosthetic limbs, right? And he is also doing social work. And at the same time, he's made it big. He's passionate about what he's doing. And, he's enjoying his work. So it's not as if he's really working, but at the same time, he's made a mark for himself, cut out a niche for himself. And that is what we need to really, help children do in today's world. As you see over here, there's a huge global skill gap, right? And 260 million in India alone, that is more than half the world's youth population, will leave school without the skills needed for the modern workplace. That is the sad situation right now. So we need to focus on it right now. It's very, very urgent. It's urgent because 1 billion hours ago only the modern Homo sapiens emerged as humans. We have come into being only, if you think, 1 billion hours ago. 1 billion seconds ago, the IBM personal computer was released. And 1 billion Google searches ago was this morning. That is, last sentence is just showing us how data is emerging, how fast information is expanding. It's the time of big data, right? And how do we teach our children to deal with everything that's happening at such a fast pace, right? So what is it that we will be teaching our children and grandchildren? And what is it that they really need to know to succeed? What skills and dispositions do they need to possess? Let's begin with the very first one on the right, learning how to learn. I knew something, so I need to sometimes adapt. I need to just unlearn something that I thought was working earlier. Now it doesn't seem to be working. I need to relearn something new. I think something we all recently experienced. We need to be adaptable to change, right? So when we go out, it's really, really windy, if you see the really huge leaves in nature also, they've adapted. They have these serrations in them, right? So the wind can pass, so they don't break away. That is the reason why they have those serrations. We need to be like that. We need to be adaptable so that we don't break when we are faced with challenges, because we don't know what challenges are coming our way as teachers, as educators, even now, and what our children will face further in 2030, 2040, and for their life. We really can't really, tell anybody what might happen at that time. We also at the same time need to possess a growth mindset. We'll talk more about that. And we also need to have some new literacies. So let us look at some of the new literacies in this next slide. And that's what the national education policy also talks about very, very strongly, that we need to introduce the 21st century skills in our learning. We're already in the 21st century, but we still feel ill-equipped. So we need to hasten ourselves, fasten our pace of learning. And though these three skills of learning, literacy, and life don't exist in silos, they exist together, and we need to use them, together. We may be using multiple skills at the same time, but definitely we have categorized them into learning skills, which are the 4 C's that all educators by now know. They are the critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication skills. The next, we have the literacy skills. We have so much information. You can see the Wi-Fi over there, right? So much information available at the click of a button, right? And we now even have the WhatsApp University. Everything is just being passed around. We have so much information at the click of a button, right? So we need to definitely learn, enhance our literacy skills, and enhance the skills of being media savvy, using technology to our benefit. All these skills we need to learn as educators, and we need to ensure that we teach the same to our children too. We also need to focus on life skills, which are flexibility, leadership, initiative, productivity, being social. Some of you had written in the first activity that, you had good social skills, you had good soft skills. These are the soft skills that you may have had that helped you cope with situations that, were giving somebody else who doesn't possess the soft skills a tough time in dealing with the pandemic. Some of the people became extremely frustrated. We've had very sad instances also. We've had people, harming themselves physically, some of them committing suicide. Very, very sad situations we have seen. And that's because maybe they didn't have certain skills, like they didn't have the resilience to cope in this kind of a situation. So definitely the national education policy talks a lot about making sure training our children for the 21st century skills. And I have been very, very influenced by ideas of Dr. Laura. She is a pediatrician, and she has, she is of the opinion that just like we have the IQ, we also have a 21st century toolkit, which is called the QI. Okay, here the Q is looking like a key, and she calls this toolkit the key toolkit. These are the key things which you need to possess along with the IQ to be able to cope with things that are happening in our world today, right? And cope with any situation that we may face in our life. What are those key skills? They actually open lots and lots of locks for us. Those key skills are the very first thing, the me skills, looking after yourself. The second is the we skills, working together. Why? Curiosity, questioning things, will, being resilient, wiggle skills, always, being energetic, innovative in our approach, wobble skills and what if skills. That means questioning, right? Resilience. And we will see each of those in a brief way as we go along. I will go on to begin with the me skills, because I personally feel if we take care of ourselves, that is the best thing that we can do, if we take care of ourselves, because if we are able to manage ourselves, we can manage anything. So he that controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still, right? That's a beautiful saying. We need to master ourselves. This is going to be the 21st century, is going to be the age of self-management. Everything is going to be moving to a self-directed mode. Until the time we don't, take care of ourselves, we are not aware of ourselves. What are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I could improve in? Am I good at making friends? Am I good at collaborating? Can I do something to improve that? Self-regulation. What do you mean by self-regulation? Maybe some of you could use the chat box to let me know if, you had a challenge while you were, moving and transitioning to online classes. And in the lockdown, the challenge to manage time, the time management, right? I was totally lost in when is it day, when is it night, whether we are at home, is it, that we are with family at home, it's a holiday time, or is it that we are working? It was a big challenge to manage everything with no help and, constantly looking at ordering things. Initially, there was so much panic, right? So time management was definitely something that many of us seem to have faced, QI is standing for key. They are key skills. Somebody has asked in the chat box, they are the key skills. And if you heard of the word chi is the positive life force, the energy that many of us, talk about, the spiritual energy that we possess that helps us cope. So these are the key skills that will open the doors for us to cope with anything that life throws at us, right? So self-regulation, self-control. We may have any kind of situation around us, but if we have control over the way we react, if we have self-control, definitely we can cope with that situation. With that, we move on to the very next thing. Problem with, again, the slide. Moving forward, give me a moment. Yeah. Moving forward, you need to remember, as a teacher, as an educator, as a family person, you can't pour from an empty cup. And who is going to pour into that cup? We ourselves have to take care. Remember, when we travel by air, the first thing, suppose we get these instructions at the beginning, and what are those instructions? They tell you that in case the cabin pressure is less, the oxygen mask, first make sure that you wear the oxygen mask, and then you take care of any other family member, or if you have a child. So this is the same rule that applies here. First, take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So do things that you like, do things that you enjoy, give yourself time. That's very, very important. Moving on, again, we are talking of self-care. Learn to relax, learn to take time out for yourself. Learn to do those kind of things, pursue a hobby so that it helps you to feel calm and cope with any kind of situation. Take care of the routine you have. It's a nice idea to follow the sun. Whatever happens in nature, the sun will always rise, right? So similarly, always follow a routine. It helps you. It takes care of your health. And once your health, your physical health is fine, your mental health is fine, you can take care of any situation. That is something we need to not only do it for ourselves, but we also need to inculcate in our children. Moving forward, I'd like to quickly go over this short clip. Thank you. So that is what I feel, that it's time to really bring on the courage, focus on yourself. Don't look at what you don't possess. Look at what you possess and work on that, and everything else falls into place. And we need to train our children to train their minds, because half of the battle is won when your mind is with you and you're able to control it. Right now on your screen, you see all about me. We are using these little worksheets for our children, maybe up to grade 1, up to grade 2. But I see that, that declines as we move on. It's so important to continue this practice as children are moving on, not only in primary school, even beyond, so that the children can keep reflecting. That is one thing I feel that we don't do, a lot with our children and with ourselves, that we don't sit back and reflect. Moving on, we move on to the next skill, which is the next key skill, being the V skill. The V skill is learning to play well with others. I cannot survive as an individual. I need to share with others. I'm a social being, right? Right now, we're all feeling so restless because we have been cut off from social interactions for a long, long time. And every time we are out for a social interaction, definitely catching the virus is playing on our minds. So the V skills are the skills that are like emotional intelligence, social emotional skills. I think last week we had a beautiful session on social emotional skills, perspective taking. Am I willing to listen to somebody else's perspective? Am I listening actively to somebody who's taking time out to talk to me? Or is there somebody who's come to me with a problem? Do I listen to them actively? Or do I be busy with my gadgets and devices? Am I doing that to my children? We need to be very, very careful. We need to listen to our little ones very, very actively. And when I say little ones, I mean children. They could be from kindergarten to, they could be college going children. They could be our family members who come to talk to us. Also, it's important to be able to express, communicate, know languages. That is very, very important. And at the same time, empathy. We need to empathize with people. We don't need to have sympathy. We need to have empathy, so that we are not lowering the self-esteem of the person across from us in any way. All these skills help us build better collaborations, better connections, and those are the skills that the NEP wants us to bring in. EQ is much, much more important than IQ. That is proven fact. In fact, the statistics on the next slide show us that 90% of the top performers, they have a high IQ. And EQ is responsible for 58% of your job performance. If you can't manage your emotions, you can't lead a place, you can't lead a team, you can't lead children. You'll turn up to be a teacher who's always losing her cool, right? Whenever there is a lot of noise in the class, it could be very constructive noise, but you are losing your cool in spite of that. That's because maybe you need to work on your emotional quotient. And even in hiring, we see the best of firms today are looking at the emotional quotient of the future team. That is very, very, and most of the times, there are so much happening all around us. We are being bombarded with new situations, information, challenges, that sometimes we tend to feel overwhelmed. We need to learn how to deal with an amygdala hijack. Amygdala is the part of the brain that deals with emotions. It's the reptilian part of the brain. So the moment that gets activated, whenever we are challenged, we have the fight or flight reflex. So we will attack back. We may retort, we may be rude, or we may, get into an argument. That is what the amygdala does to us when it gets hijacked. But there is a way around it, definitely. And what is that way around it? Luckily, we can train our brain. That is a possibility. The brain is something that we can train by certain techniques and skills. And what are those certain techniques and skills? Let us build some meditation into the routine of our children. I would take my online classes, and the first thing I would do was I would do belly breathing with my children for some time. Yes, they took some time to adapt to it. But definitely, out of those 40 kids in my class, if one or two got impacted and they found some benefit in it, I think I'm happy with that. For the rest of them, they were open to this idea of meditating. They find meditating very difficult because their thoughts are always fleeting, and the idea is only to bring your thoughts to a center. That is all that meditation is, coming to the center, and it's possible for each one of us to do. But we need to teach them young. We need to catch them young for that. We need to realize what are our emotional triggers. Would some of you want to just use the chat box quickly and write any trigger that they feel is their emotional trigger? Sometimes we feel disconnected. You can see on the screen, we feel unloved. Sometimes we feel left out. We may feel unfairly treated. That the team is not giving me enough importance. That could put you off, right? You feel ignored. These are the things. Sometimes you feel manipulated. Sometimes you're a very good soul. You want to go all out of the way to help others, right? But sometimes you feel a little left out. You feel hurt about it when others don't treat you just the way you do. So these could be your emotional triggers. You also could be feeling disrespected sometimes. And what are those, emotional triggers? They actually get you very upset. They sometimes take you into a shell, such a shell that you don't even want to talk to your family members. And that is something that is so important. We need to focus on it. What is it that's triggering us? Not only for ourselves. Let us ask our children once in a while. Do we ever sit and have a conversation around this with them? That what is it that turns you off? What is it that makes you angry? We never do that. Very few people would be doing that. I think it's very, very important that, we should do this short exercise with our children. Sometimes a child doesn't like to get scolded, and we get to hear many, many sad instances. The parents shouted at the child, scolded the child, and the next thing we know, the child is harmed themselves, So these kind of things, it's important to understand what is triggering all of this. Moving on. I think my slides are telling me to move faster, so they get stuck every time. I'm sorry about that. We will just resume the slideshow. Moving on, let us also focus on the happiness triggers. What is it that's making us happy? Let's sit and talk to our children, our students during our class. Sometimes just ask them, what is it that's making you happy? What is it that really makes you smile, makes you glow from within? You feel very, very energized. You feel content, right? Or you feel loved, you feel cared for. What are those things? Simple things. If you see on the screen, clean sheets. Are we appreciating these things while there's so many people out on the streets, sunlight or time outside, a favorite meal with the family? We saw during the pandemic, so many people taking together online classes, as a family learning to do some artwork. So those were things that were, bringing some bonding in. Moving on, we move to the will skills, which are the motivational skills. What do they include? They include dedication, drive. You need to be motivated. There can be intrinsic motivation and there can be extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is when I love something and I want to do it, right? So it's important to help our children to find what they love and help ourselves to also find what we love. Sometimes we have been so busy in whatever life throws at us that we give up all our hobbies, right? So let us find something that motivates us. Can we do something about it? Can we turn that something into something more, right? How can we do that? We need to have grit. We need to persist. We may take up something and we may give it. Many of us, are like that. We tend to start something and then we stop it. So the intrinsic motivation is something that you love, and extrinsic motivation is something that comes with awards, with punishments, which we are doing to our children every time. We want them to achieve something, we will try and offer some reward to them. Rather, why is it that we can't offer them love, affection, give them a hug, appreciate them instead of giving those material awards to them? That will definitely build the spirit in them of intrinsic motivation. We do look for people when we are, in a working situation. people who will get the job done, who are go-getters, who will want to, get up and just achieve anything. We have many in the team like that. Those are the ones who have intrinsic motivations. Those are the ones who will come forward and do something different, right? Moving on, wiggle skills. Now, this is something I really like. We normally find children, some of the children are very, very restless in the class. We are not able to curb that restlessness, right? And we're always trying to do that, but we shouldn't do that until unless it's really disrupting the class too much. The children tend to learn, they keep wiggling, moving. When they grow old, because, as adults, we call them movers and shakers. They are ready to take action. Okay. And this moving and wriggling and the extra energy that such children have, sometimes they tend to disturb us. We feel, okay, this child is disturbing my class. Have we tried to find out what is happening to that child? Maybe he's just inherently curious. Maybe he's just restless. And such curious children, they may fall into trouble more often. But definitely these children are the ones who also learn a lot more. They are much, much smarter. Much, much smarter than the others. They are much agile. Okay. So we need to make sure we are putting these wiggles to work because they are very adorable. Okay. We need to recognize them. We need to encourage them. If they have too much energy, let's get them into doing a task that they really enjoy. Something like music, something like active reading, loud reading, right? And exploring the outdoors is one very, very great way of expending their extra energy that they have. Get them involved in tasks. They are very capable of learning from a very, very small age. We tend to underestimate them, but they can manage to do just anything. At the same time, limit your attitude of being the sage on the stage and always telling them what is right, what is wrong. And you can see
I think we lost Preeti Sudha, ma'am.
Just give her a minute, so she'll come back.
Sure, ma'am. So teachers, until Preeti ma'am joins us back, how did you like the session so far?
I'm very informative.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting and useful looking at the different perspectives.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay. What is a significant takeaway for you, ma'am, from this session? One takeaway for you, for each of you. I'm just waiting for ma'am.
Whatever situation comes, we have to adjust and we have to realize.
Okay, so how would you inculcate that in the children?
We have to courageous.
You have to be courageous. That's right, ma'am. But how would you teach that skill to the students? Among your students, how would you inculcate that skill to be courageous, to take risks, calculated risks? How would you do that?
Well, I think the teacher should be the model, and she should not be afraid to explore new things with the children. And she should not think I know everything, and she should not feel scared to be showing that she doesn't know something. So they can explore together and find out, and they can also show that when they are wrong, they learn from the mistakes and move on. So that kind of risk taking, will motivate the children.
That's right. Thank you so much. Anyone else wants to suggest what are the key takeaways for you from this webinar? You can even type it in the chat box if you think it's a problem. But yeah,
another very beautiful. Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead, Shalini ma'am. And
yeah,
Meena
another
ma'am will
very
come back to you.
beautiful point.
Yeah.
what I understood was like you cannot pour from an empty cup. So self-care is also equally important than what we learn, teach to the students. If we care for ourselves, we can teach them how to care, how to learn, how to support and cooperate and communicate
Wonderful,
better.
ma'am. Wonderfully said. Yeah. Thank you so much, Shalini ma'am. Meena ma'am. Oh,
Yes, ma'am. Almost we need to
I'm back.
inculcate the
Yeah,
habit of
Lata,
self-learning.
Preeti is
Yeah.
back.
yeah. Preeti ma'am is back. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
okay.
so much for quickly taking over. And there we go again. So I hope it's visible again.
Yeah, your
Ma'am, it's
camera is not on, Preeti.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I hope this visible.
Yeah,
Yes, your screen is visible.
Perfect. Thank you. So moving on, this is what the wiggle skills are. Again, it seems to be giving a problem. I have no idea why this is happening.
Problem, it happens to best of us, and I think it's a very good example of how resilient you are, and it's a good takeaway for us actually.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very true, very true.
So
You need not feel for that, ma'am. It happens in life itself, no? Just now
absolutely.
in the beginning, you only told it is unanswered question paper, no, ma'am? Now this is also a question paper for all
Yes,
of
so
us, ma'am. Let us
we are trying to do our
be
best.
more
Thank you so
tolerant,
much.
ma'am.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
ma'am.
And I
So
really
here-
like the
Lessons,
way you're
ma'am.
handling it, with the calm, very
With a
calm demeanor.
smiling face, of course.
Thank you
With
so
a
much.
smiling face
So
on your.
being a psychology teacher, I just love this experiment, Albert Bandura's Bobo doll experiment. And while we were preparing this slide, it talks about wobbling. And wobbling means, look at what life is doing to this poor toy. It's, we are getting punched from all directions. All sorts of strange things are happening to us, We are facing problems and challenges. But what is important that like this Bobo doll, we need to just bounce back. That is exactly what we are looking for. So in this wobble skill that Dr. Laura talks about, she talks about allowing for failures early and often. Don't, kind of penalize a child who has failed. Make them reflect. I remember seeing a colleague who did this. A child had hit another child, nearly, injured another child with the sharp, pencil in near the eye. And it was definitely something that was not expected and not to be appreciated. But there had to be a reason why this child was hitting the others. So instead of scolding him, this little grade 2 child was standing near her cabin, and she gave him 5 minutes to relax. She told him to sit down. She told him to think about why he did it. And then she had a conversation with him, right? So she tried to balance it out. So we need to try and understand what is happening within their minds, right? Wobbling is so important. Coming back to the center is so important. So important to celebrate mistakes that happen, even mistakes as adults, mistakes as children. The sooner we try and celebrate them, shift their focus. Oh, you went wrong here. Okay, doesn't matter. So what did you learn out of this? What is it that you can improve? We need to shift the way we talk to them rather than just penalizing them or scolding them. That is not the way to deal. Sometimes unplug from the current digital world and spend time with them. Allow them to be unplugged. Allow them to be also bored, because with boredom comes innovation. With boredom comes creativity, because they tend to try and engage themselves in something, find something to do. And that way they create new things. That is something we need to look at when we are talking about wobbles. Moving on, let us look. In fact, we're thinking of creating a wall where we celebrate, or at least what did we learn from failure. Learning from failure is a wall where a child can say, okay, we can even start on a small scale in the class, have a board like this and say, okay, what did I learn? I failed at this. What did I learn from this? Do I need to make a better timetable to focus my attention? Do I need to look for better interests, to focus my attention on? Is there something I can do in the way I'm managing my time? Can I get up 5 minutes early? There's so many things that the child can think because they didn't achieve something, because they failed at something. So that is what we need to try and focus on. This is the next skill that we have, the what if, the questioning skills. Let us not kill the curiosity of the child because we say the adults who are childlike are actually, the adults who are curious, the adults who are creative, they are the ones who are the children who have survived. Okay, who have not been bogged down. I still see people who are adults and, they enjoy watching cartoons. They enjoy having a hearty laugh. It's so important to have that childlike innocence, attitude, and, fun-loving spirit. It always keeps you resilient in all times. And such questions, if we ask the children that what if questions, not only in our dealing with the curriculum, but in our day-to-day experiences with them, we always encourage imagination, creativity, open-mindedness, out-of-the-box thinking. That is what is, needed and the need of the hour. Now, this was another perspective that I really found interesting, and that was to do with earlier we used to say people used to be generalist. Who's a generalist? Somebody who has a broad scope, broad understanding of things, master of all, jack of all, master of none. And then there is a specialist. A specialist is only focused in one particular direction, right? You can see the generalist is broad based. A specialist is somebody who's only focused in one direction. Now, if you could be a civil engineer, right, and you are going on site to, maybe construct a bridge, but you face some kind of issue within the workers. If you don't have people skills, you will not be able to translate your idea into a project. If you're leading a school, right, you can't be just closed within that school and just taking care of your staff and everything happening properly. You need to connect with people outside. Only when you are versatile will you be able to do that. So it's important for us to try and make children versatile these days. They should be adept at doing multiple things. Reason being, then only they can connect with the world beyond, and they can get best of opportunities for whatever they're leading, whether it's a family, whether it's an institution. Each one of us are a leader in our own right. And it's important to have the skills of being versatile. So there's a wide scope of roles, there's broad experience for a versatilist, and that is what we are looking at now. If you have been to, local markets here, you would have people who have settled in from different parts of the country, and they've come and settled in Bangalore, but they speak Kannada so fluently, and they are able to even, kind of bargain with people who come in and explain to the localites all about their wares that they're selling, right? They're so versatile because had they not been versatile, they wouldn't have been able to run their business, right? So now it comes to the critical role of what we educators are doing now and what we should do in the future. Each one of us has a role to play. When should we start? We need to start very, very young. The child is born with a vision, with hearing, but by 1 year of age, we see the language is developing. By 3 to 5 years of age, actually, these executive function skills, they come up. That is thinking, reasoning, communicating, because the brain is developing very, very fast in the first 5 to 6 years, very fast. You can see 25% at birth, and 2 years, 75%, 90% at 5 years. Right? 18-month-old vocabulary can predict the third grade reading scores. Third grade reading scores predict future life. 5-year-old social skills, they predict future life outcomes. More likely to such children, they are more likely to graduate from high school and get college degree in early adulthood and have full-time employment at 25 years of age. Where are these skills beginning? These skills are beginning right at birth and sometimes even in the womb. Why is it that we talk about listening to music, calming music when the mother is carrying a child? Because calming impacts the growth. It enhances the development of the fetus. And if we move on, we could also, decide to build these skills into the child later. But imagine if you're building a house and you haven't done the wiring within the walls, you've done it outside, and after 10 years you decide that, okay, I'm going to now, it's not looking good, I'm going to wire it inside, now I'm going to again break the walls. So there's a lot of effort that goes in. It's not that it's not possible, it's possible. A lot of effort that goes in. Imagine you going and getting an education at 70 years of age. Definitely the kind of challenge that you will face will be different from what you get as a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old, right? So the brain development is really, really fast in the early years, and the ability to, collate information, the ability to absorb information is really high. The child doesn't speak in the first year, but it's so important because the child is hearing everything, that the child is learning a lot through observation, a lot through hearing, a lot through vision, right? The more we interact with the child at this age, the more neural connections will be formed in the brain of the child, and the more chances for such skills of curiosity, collaboration, empathy. A little child can feel empathy. When a parent is feeling sad, the child realizes it immediately. A small child of 2 years old, he will again and again ask you if you're crying. Are you sad? Are you sad? How do they know? They already have the feeling of empathy. So these are the things that are already there within children. We just need to allow them to be and shape them. We don't need to hammer them. What we are doing is we are hammering them. Okay, learn this, write this, perform at this level. Why can't we celebrate what is within them? With that, I move to the next slide, which takes us to what the NEP says. And beautifully, it has brought universal access for children of 3 to 6 years, access to free, safe, high quality early childhood care and education, Anganwadis, preschools, Balvatikas to be coming up, and preparatory stage to be there. Prior to the age of 5, every child will move to a preparatory class or Balvatika. We are taking care through this policy that we catch these children young so that they can have a very, very firm foundation. This is how the brain develops in early childhood. They are very curious. They have logical thinking, problem solving. They have, through play, we can encourage the discovery-based learning, ethics. All these things can happen. But what is it we are focusing on? We are focusing being lopsided. We are only focusing on the academics. We are not focusing on these soft skills, which are really not soft. You need to drive them hard into the child right at the young age, okay? And national curricula and pedagogical framework for early childhood education is soon going to be drafted by the NCERT. And they are even coming up with a 3-month play-based school preparation module for all grade 1 students to be developed. So they are really sincerely looking at gearing up to bring that change early on and make sure that every child gets an education. It's very, very important that we develop a growth mindset. What is a growth mindset? We look at what is it that we can do and not look at the failures again. So instead of saying, I don't know, I should say, I can try. I made a mistake. I can learn this. I can see how to do it. Let's have that, confidence within us. Yes, we can do it. People who have a growth mindset are the ones who will embrace challenges. They will, learn from criticism. They will ask for feedback. There are some people who don't want feedback. There are people who will ask for feedback. No, ma'am, I want to improve. And I just spoke to a doctor this morning and he asked me that, ma'am, how was my talk? Is there something I can do better? And he took it so constructively because he is wanting to improve himself. I think it's important for children and as adults for us to know that we need to just help them to improve, right? Moving on, I have a small activity. So I'm going to move out and I'm going to just take you to a different tab.
Preeti ma'am, sorry to interrupt,
yes,
but I think we are nearing time, 6:15. If you can quickly wrap in another 10 minutes.
Yes, sure, definitely. I think I'm going to wrap up with this activity and just going to leave you with that then. Yeah, 2 more minutes. So here is something you can see on screen, and I want you to just, I hope it's visible. I'm going to just spin it, and I want you to just use the chat box to tell me what do you think this means. If you could use the chat box to tell me what does 7D in a W mean? Anybody? If you could look at the others, you could also 7 days in a week. Lovely. We have somebody who is thinking like that. Amazing. Perfect. Manila ma'am. Shilpa. Excellent. Okay, let's spin this wheel again. Spin this wheel again. Half of 8. Who can tell me what is half of 8? It's quite simple. Absolutely. Some of you say 4. Amazing. Any other thoughts coming to your mind for half of 8?
Yeah, I think I can tell you rather than write.
Perfect.
It is 0.
Absolutely.
Because if you cut it, it will become 2 zeros, one on top.
Amazing. Amazing. So we have one person who's thinking out of the box. Right? One last go. Room without a door or a window. That's a little interesting. Anybody could.
Open space, ma'am.
Okay, very nice. Open space.
Universe.
Universe, lovely.
Infinity. Infinity.
Amazing. I love the responses that are coming in. One last go at this.
Infinity.
Okay, we've come back to that. Infinity is a lovely answer. It didn't strike me when I was doing this. 7W of the W.
7 working days in a week.
Amazing. It's 7 wonders of the world and you thought so differently. So
7 wonders of the world.
we need to do
7
with our
working days
children.
in a week.
Amazing.
7
Yes, it's become
working
7
days.
working days in a week.
Saptaswaras.
Lovely. Thank you for these beautiful responses. This was just a small activity to show you that it is important to allow for out-of-box thinking by doing creative activities with the children. And with that, I will stop sharing and come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Teachers, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask ma'am directly. And for the rest of you, we have the feedback form that's in the chat box. Please kindly share your feedback. And if you have any questions to ask ma'am, please go ahead. Teachers?
Any tips on how actually we can, incorporate it into our lessons or into our classrooms?
We need to actually, we are in the online mode right now, but that shouldn't deter us from trying out these things. We have lots and lots of interesting tools that we can use to help children collaborate. Collaboration is a very big thing that is required. And we need to focus more, I feel, on collaboration, because right now in this state where children are not coming to school, it's very, very difficult for them to collaborate. So if we can make them collaborate using tools like a Padlet, I could leave you with a link and you could, go to the Padlet and you could definitely try and let me know what is one thing that you want to introduce to your children, in the next 1 month. They say that it takes 21 days for a new skill to be learned by anybody. If you practice something for 21 days, you can definitely learn that, whether it's a new technique of, learning. It could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be anything. You could definitely learn that if you do that practice. There's the link that I have put. You can go to the Padlet. Let me see if I can share with you that. And you can always try to leave that one note, one skill that you are motivated to start inculcating in your students. I'll just share the screen. You can see the Padlet, you could go on to this right plus sign and you could scribble any skill there. I want them to learn anything. And mindfulness, right? So if there's anything that you think you want children to learn, you could add it on over here, something that you want to take up personally with your children. Is it developing their emotional intelligence? You can always, this Padlet is going to be open for all of us, and you're most welcome to post your responses into this as and when you have time.
Thank you so much, Preeti ma'am. It brings us to the end of a wonderful web session where we discussed quite a lot on this future ready skills. And teachers, do you have any questions to ask ma'am? Please go ahead. You can unmute and you can ask. If you are not going to ask, then I'm going to call upon you to say one thing that you have taken away from here, one significant learning that you would remember and that you would go back and implement it in your classroom. Anyone? Come on, teachers.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, this was really a very wonderful session and we really enjoyed it. And one thing I really loved was courage is most important, especially for teachers, because we take so much of risk, not only for our families, but also for the students. And we try to inculcate in some kind of good qualities in them. That, of course, nowadays in this kind of pandemic situation, this virtual teaching learning process has it's actually a problem for us to inculcate the socio-emotional skills in them. But somehow we wish that all these things come to an end and the regular schools start. We would like to see the faces of our children. And I hope even the children are dying to see the faces of their teachers. So definitely we are going to inculcate whatever Preeti ma'am has told. And Preeti ma'am, you are really an inspiration to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Padmaja ma'am, for sharing your thoughts. And just 2 days back we had 2-3 days back our children in school, a few of them, and the parents had brought those children, and there were all social distancing norms and safety procedures in place, but those children were so excited. And it was so good to see those children. And the parents were so excited. They were saying, ma'am, please open the schools. We want to come back to school. And we're actually missing the children in school. And, I think we want to go back to normalcy in life, but we will definitely make it to the other end and we'll make it together. That I can.
One more thing, ma'am, with your permission.
Lot, right?
Yeah, just one more small thing. Actually,
Yes.
what happened all these days was that if at all we used to complain about any child to the parent would take it in a very negative way. But now what we have learned is in this 1.5 years, the parent has completely understood the child, and now they come back and say, ma'am, yes, what you said was right. And today we had a parent-teachers meeting, and this parent, one of the students' parent of my class, he said, ma'am, it hats off to you people because you're all tolerating our children. He used the word tolerating. So that means even the parents have understood the efforts of the teachers and the kind of difficulties and problems that even we are facing. So sometimes we feel thanks to this pandemic. Sometimes it is like a blessing in disguise, I feel so.
So true. So
because
true.
Parents are able to understand the effort of the teachers.
Yes, I think it's good that they have been able to also reflect. I think everybody needs some time of reflection, something which is missing in us, in our daily lives, and now this pause has given us the time to reflect. What is it that we want to do with our children? Where do we want to lead them? That is what we need to think. And where do we need to be facilitators, right? So we need to be equipped ourselves. So if these skills are not there within us, we still have to develop them. We have to inculcate them for ourselves. And for some of you mentioning the Padlet link is not working, I'm definitely going to share it again. And I'm going to share the Padlet link in case you want to still try sharing and leave a comment there about what you wish to do. It is active. I will be sharing it and keeping it open, so don't worry at all. It's seeming like you're not able to access, doesn't matter. We definitely keep it open, and I look forward to your responses. Till tomorrow, I'm going to keep it open, right?
Thank you so much, ma'am. And Meena, ma'am, you were trying to share something. Are you still here, Meena? Meena, ma'am is not there. She was trying to share something that time before. No, we couldn't allow her to share. Okay. Anyone else wants to share? Okay. So thank you so much, Preeti ma'am. It was a wonderful session, and we would share this link with, it will be there in our YouTube link, and I'll also share it with you, ma'am. Maybe you can also share it with teachers who are not able to join. And see you. Thank you all. Thank you, teachers, for your patient hearing and for staying till the end of the webinar. And Sumati ma'am, over to you for a few words.
Thank you, Preeti. It was a wonderful session. Thanks, Lata. We'll get back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumati ma'am, and thank you, Lata ma'am. Thank you, IIEM, for the opportunity.
Thank you all.
Thank you
so much.